My boyfriend posted, "Sometimes you have to lose me to realize my worth." I liked the post and said nothing. 2 months later, he saw who I was holding hands with and finally realized what he'd lost. My name is Alicia Carter. I'm 30 years old, and until 8 months ago, I thought I had my life completely figured out. I had been dating Ethan Reynolds for 3 years. He was 28. He worked in marketing, drove a leased BMW he could barely afford, and had this obsession with looking successful online. Every dinner had to be aesthetic. Every trip had to be curated. Every moment had to be documented. At first, I didn't mind. I run a small but growing software consulting firm. I could afford nice dinners, weekend trips, designer gifts. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't building a relationship. I was financing a brand. The beginning of the end started on a Tuesday night in February. We were at his apartment. He was scrolling on his phone while I finalized slides for a major client presentation. "Babe," he said casually, not looking up. "Should we go to Tulum next month?" Tulum, I didn't even glance up from my laptop. That's at least $4,000. I have payroll coming up and I'm saving for the new office space. He finally looked at me, and the irritation in his eyes was immediate. "You're always saving for something. When do we actually live?" "We went to Miami 2 months ago." "That doesn't count." I closed my laptop slowly. "We spent $3,000 that weekend." He rolled his eyes. "You're so focused on money lately. It's like you've changed." That comment stayed with me. I hadn't changed. I had matured. When I started my firm 4 years ago, I worked 80-hour weeks, slept on an air mattress, ate ramen most nights. I clawed my way up from nothing. Now I had 12 employees, stable contracts, real savings. And suddenly, because I stopped saying yes to everything, I was the villain. The arguments multiplied. He wanted a luxury high-rise downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, rooftop pool. Rent $3,800. I suggested waiting 6 months until my largest contract renewed. He sulked for 3 days. He wanted a new car because everyone at work has newer models. His BMW was 2 years old. He accused me of being embarrassed by him. Every conversation about the future turned into a fight about spending. And every time I tried to explain that I was building stability for us, he called me cheap. One night in late February, I suggested skipping a coworker's birthday dinner because I'd spent 60 hours salvaging a failed client project. "Are you serious?" He snapped, already dressed. "I told everyone we're coming." "I'm exhausted, Ethan." "You're always exhausted. Do you know how embarrassing it is when people ask where you are?" "I'm building a company. This is temporary." "You've been saying that for 2 years." He left alone. I sat there feeling like the worst girlfriend alive. But beneath the guilt, something else was forming. Resentment. Then came the post. It was a Friday night in March. I was at my apartment working past midnight. One of my developers had quit. We were 3 days from losing an $18,000 contract. Ethan had invited me to some new rooftop club. I declined. Around midnight, I checked my phone. There he was. Black suit, perfect lighting, cocktail in hand. Caption: "Sometimes you have to lose me to realize my worth. Know your value and never settle." His friends flooded the comments. "King. She doesn't deserve you. Her loss." I stared at it for a long time. Then I tapped the heart and put my phone down. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Really? That's all you have to say?" I didn't answer. He called 3 times. I declined each one. And for the first time in 3 years, I chose silence. The next morning, there were 17 messages. Apologies, then anger, then blame. At noon, I replied, "I think we need to take a break." He called immediately. A break? Are you serious? You humiliated me publicly instead of talking to me. I didn't name you. Everyone knows we're together." He went quiet. Then soft. I was drunk. I felt alone. "Please don't do this." I felt something I'd never felt before. "Nothing. I need space." "For how long?" "I don't know." He started crying. The old me would have driven over with flowers. This time I just felt tired. "I have to go, Ethan." I hung up. And instead of heartbreak, I felt relief. The first week without Ethan felt like detox. I kept reaching for my phone out of habit, to text him good morning, to tell him about a small win, to ask what he wanted for dinner. The silence was loud at first. But underneath the loneliness, there was something lighter. Like I had been carrying a weight so long, I'd forgotten what standing upright felt like. I threw myself into work. Within 2 weeks, I hired 2 new developers to replace the one who quit. By the end of March, I signed a new client worth $240,000 annually. The kind of contract that shifts your entire growth trajectory. My business partner Derek noticed it before I did. "You're different," he said during a meeting at the coffee shop near the potential office space. "Sharper, focused." "Just redirecting my energy," I replied. Well, keep doing whatever you're doing. We're killing it. We were. For the first time, growth didn't feel fragile. It felt sustainable. Ethan reached out a few times during that month. Short texts. Can we talk? I miss you. I've been thinking about everything. I kept my responses polite and brief. Then in early April, he sent a long email. Reflective, regretful, promising he understood now, that he'd been unfair, that he wanted to build something real. I read it twice and didn't respond. Eventually, the messages stopped, and my life started feeling like mine again. I started going back to the gym, not because someone wanted cute couple selfies, but because I wanted to feel strong. I took my mom to dinner and stayed present the entire time instead of checking my phone every 5 minutes. I reconnected with old friends who didn't measure connection by Instagram tags. The quiet was healing. Then in early May, I met Daniel. It happened at the same coffee shop Derek and I frequented, the one near the office space I was considering leasing. Daniel was sitting at the table next to my laptop open, completely immersed in whatever he was designing. No flashy watch, no designer logo screaming for attention, just quiet focus. We reached for the sugar at the same time. He smiled first. I think we might share the same caffeine addiction. I laughed. It's obvious, isn't it? I've been coming here every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 months. That's funny. I'm scouting it out. I'm leasing the tech space down the street. His eyes lit up. The Fifth Street office, I designed their website last year. Small world. We started talking. Daniel was a freelance graphic designer. 3 years earlier, he'd left a stable corporate job to build his own client base. He talked about his work with actual passion, not as a stepping stone to something flashier, but because he genuinely loved creating. There was no performance in him. Over the next few weeks, we kept running into each other. Same days, same corner table. Eventually, it wasn't coincidence. We worked in comfortable silence, occasionally exchanging ideas. Coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into dinner. By June, we were officially dating. Daniel was different from Ethan in every way that mattered. He drove a used Honda Civic he'd paid off years ago and maintained meticulously. He cooked dinner at home, and he was actually good at it. He asked about my business goals and listened carefully, offering thoughtful suggestions instead of calculating what the revenue could fund. When I told him about the new office lease, he didn't ask how big it was or how impressive it would look. He asked how it would support my team. When I landed a major client, he showed up at my place with a homemade chocolate cake and a handwritten note that said, "You built this." No reservations, no rooftop bar, no curated audience. Just us. We kept things quiet at first. Not secret, just sacred. No social media announcements, no couple branding. We both agreed our relationship was ours, not content. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to prove anything. In early July, we went to a food festival downtown. Nothing glamorous, just messy tacos and live music that was slightly off-key. Daniel pulled me close while we waited in line and said, "You look happy." "I am," I answered honestly. He took a simple selfie of us in front of a taco truck. No filters, no strategic lighting. Later that night, he posted it with the caption, "Trying new things with someone who feels like home." That was it. No drama, no shade, no performance. I didn't think about Ethan when Daniel posted it. Honestly, I hadn't thought about Ethan in weeks. That changed 3 hours later. My phone started vibrating nonstop. Mutual friends texting, some congratulating me, others sending only the wide-eye emoji. Then Derek texted, "You might want to check your ex's story." I hesitated for a second before opening Instagram. There it was. Ethan had reposted Daniel's photo. Caption, "Interesting. Guess she had time after all." Funny how priorities change. I stared at it. The old Alicia would have felt guilt, panic, the need to explain. This version of me just felt detached. Daniel noticed the shift in my expression. "Everything okay? Just my ex being dramatic." He studied me for a moment. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No, he'll get over it." But as I would soon learn, Ethan wasn't ready to get over anything. Ethan didn't get over it. If anything, Daniel's photo ignited something in him. Over the next week, his Instagram turned into a carefully curated campaign. Gym selfies, expensive dinners, stories from rooftop lounges, with captions about leveling up and never settling. He dyed his hair darker, sharper. Started wearing suits more often. Every post looked like a silent rebuttal. His friends filled the comments the way they always had. "Glow up." She fumbled. "You're thriving." I watched exactly one of the stories. Then I muted him. My life was moving in a different direction. That same week, my company signed the biggest contract we'd ever landed, nearly $500,000 over 2 years. We finalized the lease on the Fifth Street office. Construction started immediately. Daniel came by one evening with layout sketches, suggesting ways to optimize the creative workspace and soften the harsh industrial lighting. "You don't want it to feel like a pressure cooker," he said, pointing to the blueprint. "You want your team to breathe." No one had ever cared about my employees' comfort before. Ethan had only ever asked how impressive the place would look. 3 weeks after the Instagram incident on a Thursday afternoon in late July, my assistant buzzed my office line. "Alicia, there's an Ethan Reynolds here to see you. He says it's important." I leaned back slowly in my chair. Of course it was. "Send him in." When he walked into my office, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked immaculate. Tailored navy suit, polished shoes, perfectly styled hair. Designer sunglasses still perched on his head like he'd walked out of a photo shoot. He didn't wait to be invited to sit. He lowered himself into the chair across from my desk and scanned the room. "Nice place," he said. "Way better than that co-working space." "It suits us," I replied evenly. His gaze lingered on the glass walls, the exposed brick, the framed company mission statement behind me. "So the business is doing well." "It is." Silence stretched between us. He broke it first. I wanted to talk. "We broke up 4 months ago." "You asked for space," he corrected. "That's not the same thing." "It was for me." His jaw tightened slightly. "So you just moved on?" "I met someone after we ended things." "How long after?" His voice sharpened. "How long after you asked for space did you start seeing him?" I held his gaze. 2 months. He laughed softly, but it wasn't amused. "So you weren't even trying to fix us?" "There was nothing left to fix." His eyes flashed. "That's convenient." "No," I said quietly. "It's honest." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. 3 years, Alicia. 3 years. And you replaced me in 2 months. "I didn't replace you," I answered calmly. "I healed. And then I met someone." "Did you ever even love me?" That question almost pulled something from me. "Almost." "I did," I said. "But love isn't enough when the values don't align." He looked around the office again as if trying to measure it. "So what, he's better?" "Daniel is different." "In what way?" "He doesn't see me as an opportunity." His expression faltered. "That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you asked about my business without immediately asking what it could fund? When was the last time you suggested saving instead of upgrading?" His silence was answer enough. "You posted that I wasn't worth it," I continued. "Publicly. For validation from people who don't know our relationship." "I was hurt," he snapped. "You weren't there. Everyone was asking about you. I felt stupid." "So you made me the villain to protect your image." His voice softened. "I didn't think you'd actually leave." There it was. The truth. He hadn't believed I would choose myself. I studied him carefully now. He looked good. Stronger. Leaner. But there was something fragile underneath the polish. Something performative. "Are you happy?" he asked suddenly. "Yes." "With him?" "Yes." He swallowed. "Is he really enough for you?" I almost smiled. "He doesn't try to be enough. He just shows up." Ethan stood abruptly and walked toward the door, then stopped with his hand on the handle. "I didn't realize you were serious," he said quietly. "I thought you'd fight harder." "I did fight," I replied, "for 3 years." He nodded slowly as if that answer hurt more than anger would have. When he left, I expected something to hit me. Regret, nostalgia, the ache of shared memories. Instead, I felt still. Not cold, just finished. But the story wasn't entirely over. Because later that evening, as Daniel and I were cooking dinner together in my apartment, my phone buzzed again. A new Instagram story from Ethan. This time, no passive aggression. Just one line. "Sometimes you don't realize what you had until it's gone." And for the first time, I knew. He finally understood his own caption. 3 months passed after Ethan showed up at my office. 3 quiet, steady, almost boring months. The kind of months that don't make good Instagram stories. The kind that build foundations. Ethan deleted most of the dramatic posts from that period. The vague quotes, the glow-up captions, the thinly veiled commentary. Through mutual friends, I heard he was dating someone new, a woman named Brittany Hale. She worked in finance, drove a Porsche, loved rooftop lounges and international travel. On paper, they made sense. I didn't feel jealousy. I felt relief. Daniel and I moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood, one we actually needed. Not floor-to-ceiling windows for content, not a rooftop pool for aesthetic. Just sunlight space and a small balcony where Daniel insisted on growing herbs we forgot to water half the time. We split rent evenly. We split groceries. We split decisions. And somehow that equality felt romantic in a way grand gestures never had. My business expanded again. 15 employees now. The new office fully operational. We signed another major contract that put us on track to double revenue before the end of the year. For the first time, my savings account wasn't just a buffer. It was security. Real security. Daniel celebrated the milestones quietly. A home-cooked dinner, a handwritten note tucked under my laptop that read, "Proud of you." No public announcement, no champagne sprayed for strangers to applaud, just partnership. One evening in late October, as we sat on the couch surrounded by moving boxes we still hadn't unpacked, Daniel turned to me. "Do you ever regret not trying again with him?" The question surprised me. I thought about it honestly. "No," I said after a moment, "because when someone shows you who they are, you have to believe them." He didn't push further. He never does. That's the thing about Daniel. He doesn't compete with ghosts. A few weeks later, I ran into Ethan by accident at a networking event downtown. It was crowded, loud, filled with ambitious people, pretending not to compare themselves to everyone else in the room. He saw me first, walked over. Brittany was on his arm, polished, poised, perfectly styled. "Alicia," he said, careful, controlled. "Ethan." We exchanged the kind of polite smiles former lovers perfect. "How's the company?" he asked. "Growing." He nodded. I heard. There was no accusation in his voice anymore, no sharp edge. Just distance. "And you?" I asked. "Good," he replied. "Busy." Brittany squeezed his arm lightly, a subtle claim. I noticed he didn't flinch. "I'm glad," I said and meant it. For a split second, something unspoken passed between us. Recognition of who we had been and why it hadn't worked. He used to think I was withholding joy. I used to think he was careless. We were both wrong in different ways. He wasn't evil. He was insecure. He needed external applause to feel valuable, and I needed stability to feel safe. We were simply mismatched. As I walked away from that conversation, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt grown. Later that night, Daniel picked me up from the event. "You okay?" he asked as we drove home. "Yeah. Run into anyone interesting? Just someone I used to know." He reached over and squeezed my hand without asking for details. And that was enough. The funny thing about Ethan's original post is that he was right. Sometimes you do have to lose someone to realize their worth. He just didn't realize he was the one who would learn the lesson. I didn't lose value when we broke up. I stopped discounting myself. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't then. I wasn't asking him to stop living. I was asking him to build with me. There's a difference. One is consumption. The other is partnership. Daniel and I are talking about buying a house next year, maybe adopting a dog. Nothing flashy, nothing curated. Just ordinary, beautiful goals. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm auditioning for love. I feel chosen. Not for what I can provide, not for what I can fund, but for who I am when no one is watching. And that is worth everything.